There's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of days about court storming in college basketball after Duke star Kyle Filipowski got upended. Not even upended. He got ran into at Wake Forest as their students went to storm the court. It happens. Court storming happens. Damn it. Court storming happens. Rushing the field happens. Tearing down the goalpost happens. It's what we like. We enjoy seeing the videos of the students rush the field, running onto the court, tearing down the goalposts. They should be excited. Students should be happy and interested in their games and be overcome with joy, whether it's an upset, whether it's you beat a longtime rival, you beat the number one team in the country, whatever the case may be. I want to see that continue in college sports. But it feels different this time that maybe, and maybe I'm just overthinking it, but it feels like there are more voices now, and maybe this isn't the last straw, but we're inching towards a last straw, that this will not continue in the future. And I don't know how I feel about it, because I agree on one aspect that, like, well, you can't rush the court in an NBA game. Yeah, I get that. An NBA game, nobody cares as much as the kids at Wake Forest did about beating Duke over the weekend. So there's different levels. I saw Jay Billis's solution of, hey, let everybody run on the court and then put some ropes up and arrest everybody, give them citations, whatever the case may be. I don't think that's reasonable or logical or remotely feasible. You're going to detain 2,500 people and write them all tickets. Okay, cool. But I want to see field storming continue. I want to see rushing the field. I want to see goalposts being torn down and then trotted to the nearest body of water and throwing that thing in the river. It's fun. It's exciting. It's what makes college football and college basketball different from the NBA and different from the NFL. And while I think maybe Chris Canty from ESPN didn't do a great job of explaining his position, I agree that at some point, and football's a little bit easier, right? Guys are pretty big, pretty strong, are wearing pads. They're a little more protected, and there's more of them. But you don't really necessarily have confrontations. You don't have situations where people are in danger. Now, I covered a collegiate football coach, if you remember, it's been probably 20 years now, that and nobody still really knows what happened, that as an assistant coach, he allegedly decked and dropped an opposing fan who rushed the field. He punched him in the face, and then that person had medical issues for quite a while, and he went on to become a Division II college coach. And he was a nice guy. I enjoyed chatting with him a lot, but that happened. That marred his college coaching career. That there are people that would tell you that he was going to be a Division I head coach and would have been a great Division I head coach, and his career got sidelined. And you had the Alabama thing a few years ago with Tennessee, that, you lose your cool. And so things happen. I get that. But I don't want the idea that because a basketball player got injured, and I think it's cynical, but I believe that Kyle Filipowski has some responsibility in that situation of, if there are hundreds of people running at you, to just stand there. Or I think he kind of goes to shove somebody and sticks his leg out and gets hit. And now it comes out, he didn't have an MRI, didn't have an x-ray. He's walking perfectly fine, no limp. In that moment, I'm certain it's scary. I'm certain that being an opposing player in that situation is probably really an uneasy feeling, that there is a wave of college kids, probably a good portion of them over the legal limit, their blood alcohol content, rushing at you after they just beat you. I'm certain there is an uneasy feeling that comes with that. So make no mistake about it. I don't envy Duke being in that spot. But I also think that Chris Canty from ESPN earlier today on First Take saying, like, he's kind of walking around like it's a stroll through the quad. I think he's correct. I think he acted as if I can just walk here and this mad rush of people is going to respect my personal space. I don't think that was likely to happen. And the same thing happened with Caitlin Clark at Ohio State earlier this year, that I think she kind of flopped. And I don't know that it was flopped as much as she got caught off guard by making contact with somebody, because you don't expect to make contact with somebody in that situation. And in football, again, different. You're wearing pads, you got a helmet on, so if something does happen, you are protected from a crazed fan. And I know that the argument against court storming and rushing the field is this has the potential to be really bad, really dangerous. People have been paralyzed. All it takes is one maniac, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I understand those points of view. I really, honestly, truly do. But I also feel as if, like, at some point, and it's probably a miracle that it hasn't happened yet. For instance, in Major League Baseball, it's a miracle that a pitcher hasn't taken a comebacker to the side of the head that just killed them. They just hit him in the temple at the right spot with the right velocity, right in the perfect placement, and they died. And when it happens, somebody is going to say, we need to have pitchers wear helmets from now on, or they need to wear face shields, whatever the case may be. They need to wear some sort of protection other than just a stitched together piece of cloth with a bill on it. And my response will be like, okay, well, we went like 150 years with this not being an issue. Has it always been an issue and we just got lucky billions of times? Or is this just a freak thing? Is it a freak accident that just happened to happen? And you don't, like, I used to work at a company where we used to joke every time, like anytime something would happen, that you'd sit in a meeting and the boss would say, how do we make sure this never happens again? And sometimes the answer is you don't make sure it doesn't happen again. There's nothing you can do to make sure that it doesn't happen again. In this situation, are there things you can do to ensure that court storming doesn't happen, rushing the field doesn't happen, tearing down the goalpost doesn't happen? Yes, absolutely there are. But do I want to live in a college sports landscape where there is no more court storming, there is no more rushing the field, there is no more tearing the goalpost down? I don't. No, I want to live in a world where that exists. Now, I'm not going to be a court storming police, but every once in a while you see one, it's like, oh man, you're supposed to be a blue blood. What the hell are you storming the court for? But it's fun. They're college kids that are 18 to 23 years old. If they want to run out on the field, who cares? As long as the overwhelming majority of interactions don't even include interactions with the other team. Now, every once in a while you get, somebody who's overserved and a little pickled and might say something to an opposing player. But at the end of the day, does everybody have a responsibility to make sure that situation kind of goes off without a hitch? Yeah, I think so. Because it's really easy to point blame at, like, I think you could argue that saying Kyle Filipowski shouldn't have been walking around like he was going for a stroll on the quad is victim blaming. And you're right. You're 100% right. Absolutely 100%. That is blaming somebody who had something happen to them that people rushing the floor had no business being on the floor. That is in a perfect world. In a perfect realm, Kyle Filipowski should be able to slowly jaunt off the court in whatever motion and manner he wants. But it wasn't a perfect world. There were hundreds of people rushing at him. And what did he do? Acted as if they weren't there. So is there some responsibility to be shared by the students rushing the floor, the arena security, arena facilities people, the Duke players, the Duke coaches, the Wake Forest coach? Yes, all of those people bear responsibility for the situation. Just like when you rush the field, stadium security is responsible for who should and should not get on the field and whether or not the goalpost should or should not be pulled down. But I feel as if this time is slightly different, that there are more dissenting voices saying court storming has to stop, rushing the field has to stop, tearing the goalposts down have to stop. And there's been measures put in place to try to stop it, right? Like you see the SEC say, we're going to fine teams that allow their fans to rush the field. And then like Tennessee turned that into a fundraising opportunity of, hey, we just beat Alabama. We're going to get fined. We need your cash, which I'm certain is not the way that the SEC had ever intentioned that rule to be put in place. Was, hey, we're gonna send you a bill for your kids rushing onto the field, and then Tennessee's like, well, we're gonna raise $1 million off of that, so thank you. I've seen some quasi solutions because everybody has this idea of, you want to stop it right now? There's one way to do it. Here's how you do it, and I get that. I've seen the idea of like, you know what? Find them and put that money into the opposing school's NIL collective. Would that stop court storming? Probably not, because those kids don't give a damn. You think they care? If you're rushing the field at a college football game, do you think these people are thinking logically, going, wait, everybody, no, don't step on the field. That's going to go to $250,000 to the opponent's NIL fund. No, they don't care. And you could argue, you can put the rope up. If you put a rope up, they're not going to rush the field. Listen, there's a sad reality of when you go to a game is that there are, depending on the game, depending on the sport, depending on the situation, a roughly 5,000 to 1 discrepancy between average fan / potential hooligan, insecurity, cops, security guards. It's about 5,000 to 1. So you can argue about whatever you'd like to say, this is going to be the deterrent that's going to stop court storming, to stop rushing the field. It's not going to be that, because you just frankly don't have the manpower or the firepower to deal with the sheer amount of people that, if they get into a mob mentality or whatever the case may be, you don't have the ability to contain them. And that's just the reality of the situation. So you can say whatever argument you'd like, unless your argument is, we're going to have in addition to having an ambulance on standby at every game, we're going to have a tank on standby to roll in there and start turning people's faces into hamburger meat if they get on the field. Your solution is not going to work. You can, whatever finding, like the college kids who are going to storm the court, rush on the field, are never in a million years going to be like, wait a minute, think about the school's finances before we run out. It just is not going to happen. So stop it. The people who are rushing the field, storming the court, already are not thinking logically. So whatever logical solution you have to fixing this problem, that I don't think is a problem, is not going to work. But I do think that there is this ball rolling towards maybe increasing the fines, increasing the security, increasing the consequences for running onto the field, storming the court, whatever the case may be. And if that goes away, I'm not going to cry about it. But at the same time, it is what differentiates college sports from professional sports. And I don't want college sports to look at professional sports and go, man, if only we could be more like that. Because that ain't the way. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content that we're pumping out here on Saturday Glory. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow here on the Daily Huddle with Saturday Glory.